Okay, so I'm just going to repeat what I said. We are going to be we've created our front elevation. So what we did is we created a new elevations layer, and on that elevations layer with our either main floor plan visible or our roof plan we're going to get into, we used our elevation grid class and we drew down some snapping lines. So first of all, we're just going to use our line tool and we are going to zoom in and we're going to show what we see, right? So from up until this point, we have been dimensioning off the edge of outside of sheathing. This now we actually want to snap from our outside of siding. So this is what we can see. This is the outside of the building, what we're visually seeing in elevation. So I'm just gonna go and snap off of the corners of my building. And I'm gonna bring down these lines. Now with this elevation in particular, it's not one solid face. There's one face here and then it goes in and another face here for the garage. So we need to show that because we're drawing in orthogonal, we need to make sure we're differentiating the planes of this elevation. So I have these 4 lines. I'm going to, and actually what I will do is I will just start and I'll just drag them down. So I have these 4 lines. I'm also going to draw my ground line. So in this case, this is going to be our starting point. I'm going to make sure that's a nice thick line weight. Now, everything is going up from this ground line. So I'm going to duplicate, move, Command D, Command M, duplicate and move. I'm going to go up 8 inches first of all. So I'm going to type in 8 for my Y offset and hit OK. Before I go any further, I'm going to change this line weight to my 0.3 because all my lines from here are going to be that line weight. So that 8 inches up is so that our structure, our siding, all our organic material isn't in contact with our ground line. Then from there, I'm going to go duplicate, move, Command D, Command M. Now I have to accommodate my floor system. And there's different ways of doing things. We could be doing a slab on grade, at which point that 8 inches is going to be our main floor, top of main finished floor. But in this case, I'm going to be doing a crawl space. So I'm going to have to move it up 1.5 inches for my sill plate. So right now I'm just moving it up. I'm just kind of breaking it down in my head or in drawing steps. Instead of duplicating it again, I'm just going to move it. So Command M. So then I'm going to go up. That's my sill plate. Then on top of that, I'm going to have my floor framing. So let's assume in this case it's going to be 2x10s. So I'm going up 9.25 inches. And then I'm going to also I have to move up 3/4 inch for my plywood. Okay, so from my top of concrete to my top of finished floor, I should have 11.5 inches. Okay, so this is my floor right here. Now from here, I'm going to measure 2 lines. I'm going to duplicate, move. I'm going to go up 6'8" for the head height of my windows and doors. So our head height is 6'8". That's the top of our doors and the top of our windows. They're all going to align. I'm going to go back to my floor line. I'm going to duplicate, move that one again. And this time this is going to be the top of my walls. So in this case, I'm going to do 9-foot walls. But when we're actually doing this, it's going to be 9'1" to allow for 1/2 inch drywall on the ceiling and enough space for expansion and contraction of the wood. So If I was doing an 8-foot wall height, it would be 8'1". If I was doing a 9-foot, it would be 9'1". This is where like pre-cut studs come to make this height. I'm gonna hit OK. And there I have all my elevation lines for this front elevation. I can draw rectangles now and start boxing everything in. In this case, I'm just gonna go to this line because I'll show you. And even I could break them up into smaller faces. That one didn't snap. Because if I'm applying hatches or images, now I could, if they're different, or I can break them up in other ways. So I boxed in all these faces, so really I can get rid of all these horizontal lines. Oh, right, I'm in my elevation grid. And I can get rid of my elevation grids. I don't actually want these in. I want to change the class of these rectangles, so I can select all of them. It says 3 rectangles. It tells me the class I'm in elevation grid. I can select this and change it to line weight 0.3, and there is my boxes. Except I forgot that I don't want to delete my head height line. So I will go backwards. So I can just select my lines and press shift and deselect my head height, and now delete those. Again, select my rectangles, go in, change my line weight, and now I can go, I've boxed in my exterior faces, and now I can go back up to my floor plan and bring down my doors and windows. If I break it up into stages, then I'm not going to have a whole bunch of grid lines that I have to then figure out, oh, which one's which. So I do break it up into stages. I need to do the faces first, and then I can go up and bring down my window lines. So doors and windows I can do all at the same time. I'm just gonna bring them down a little bit for now just because I have that other elevation. So I'm making sure that I'm doing the same point of reference for each of my windows, right? I could snap off this point and then work out for accommodating our jambs, but I'm gonna work on the outside of all my windows. Okay, almost done. Bless you. Now I'm going to select all my objects, so clicking my marquee and pressing Option, I can zoom out and bring these all down. Holding Shift is going to make sure I'm doing it vertically, and now I can box in my windows. If I looked on my plan view, these windows are 2 feet by 5 or 4 feet by 5. So 2 feet and 4 are the horizontal, the widths. The 5 feet is the height. We don't see them in plan view, but we do see them in elevation view. So again, I can change my class. I'm going to be in my line weight 30. I'm going to do rectangles. I can double click on my rectangle tool, and that brings up this create object dialog box. So I can just say, I want this window to be 2 feet by 5 feet. And I can click this one reference point and hit OK. And now I'm placing that window in that location. I can use my selection tool and click Option Drag because that's the same size window. I don't want to have to draw it again. I can also click Option Drag my other window. That didn't go in the right location. Oh, I'm not snapping. So you can see how important snapping is and how a little bit off, it's easy to get a little bit off. So this window, I just clicked option dragged. Obviously it's only 2 feet wide, but I can easily, instead of recreating another rectangle, I can just change it in my selection, on my object info palette by changing my point of reference. So from this point, I want it actually to be 4 feet wide, and now I have my windows. I can option select my grid lines and delete them because they've served their purpose. Now, let's work on, there's different ways of adding detail to our windows and doors, and it totally depends on how you want to style them. I can also, so in this case, we're going to want to use our offset tool and our double line polygon. So I can draw a rectangle around all 3 windows. In this case, I'm going to kind of treat them as one unit. So I've done a outside rectangle, and then with my offset tool, I'm going to apply trim. I can go up into my tool preferences, the wrench and the pencil, and specify a distance here, or I can also change the distance in this data field, or by double clicking on my offset tool, that automatically takes me into my offset tool preferences. So I could just say I want, say, a 6-inch trim and hit OK. And now with the offset tool, those settings, they don't do anything at the beginning. We have to specify if we're clicking outside or clicking inside. So in this case I clicked outside. I can also undo those offset tools, and the settings are still applicable. So I could click inside, and there's my offset if I wanted to. In this case, I want it outside. Now, when we're getting into elevations and applying details, we want to, a lot of time we're going to have fill, and we're going to apply hatches or image fills. So I can actually give this rectangle a solid fill. Now, because it was created most recently and because it's larger than all the other objects, that fill then covers all the other objects. So this is where we're going to need to be aware of stacking order. And what I can just do is send this all the way to the back. So Command B. And what I can do now too is with these other rectangles, this one, I'm going to offset this. So I'll double click, and I actually want to do 2 inches. So this is going to add that much more detail, and we can play with this and add as much detail as we'd like. We want to kind of give it some definition. So I can include MUNT bars, so I can do my double line polygon or double click on it, and that changes my separation. I want it to be an inch separation, so I can click OK. Now I'm going to align this with my center left. I want my middle, but if it's not already specified up here, I can use my U key to toggle between the insertion options, and I can click and complete that. I can do this side as well. I can go from the midpoint to the top center. I can also go from here to here. Now you can see obviously this is gonna cross, but if we apply fill, so you're gonna have to be aware of when you want fill and when you don't want fill. Also, if say for instance I wanted to split this into 3 sections, what I can do is this snap to distance. If I select, right up until this point we haven't necessarily had this snap to distance selected, I can select it, and double clicking on it takes me into the settings for that smart cursor settings. I'm saying distance, and right now it's at 25%. I can also do fractions, so it's going to tell me every quarter inch, or break my objects into quarters. But say for instance, I want to break this up into thirds, and hit OK, and multiple divisions, and hit OK. Now, again, in my double line polygon tool, I can see that now where I'm snapping this a long line, that is that distance. So I can go and I can click, and now I can double click to finish. I can break this up into thirds, and I don't have to measure, it's just doing that work for me. Okay, so here I also need to draw a line down. Now what I could do is I could just draw it straight down, but I could add detail, and this is where we can add detail and make things really pop. So if I actually move this in 1 inch, it's going to then show that in that overhang of the siding, because our sheathing is going to align with our edge of concrete, so that siding is going to protrude past that concrete. So here also it's going to show a little bit more definition, and it's going to indicate, I'm going to command move, this time I'm going -1 inch and hit OK. So you can see that this space is in the foreground because of the way I've added that detail. And here I can add another line and move it this time to the right. -1. And we can see how that creates a little bit more detail. Okay, does everybody feel good about drawing windows, adding details, getting those elevation heights? I will draw them on the board. And then I'll go into drawing the other elevations.
So all of these lines, we use the elevation thickness 3, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Except for the ground line.
Right.